Hi, this is Noma Dimitri from the Alpine Garden, and today I'm going to show you how to deadhead roses. Roses have always intimidated me as a gardener because there seems to be so much advice on how to do everything concerning roses, and there's so many different kinds and they're so complicated, and you have to think of so many things and to fertilize them all the time and be careful on how to deadhead them and put them in the right place and give them the right amount of water and give them the right amount of sunlight and everything else. And so they've always intimidated me until I took the plunge, which perhaps you're trying to do right now, and started growing roses and observing them and seeing how they work really in a real setting. So I have a few hints to tell you about how to deadhead roses in order to, and what is the reason why you deadhead roses? You deadhead roses because you're going to get better roses and more roses. That's the basic reason you want to do it. If you don't care about that, then don't grow roses, or just grow them and don't deadhead them and you won't get more. But if you want more roses, you got to deadhead them, and I'm going to show you how to do this. Before I show you how to do it, perhaps we can think of this video as consisting of two different parts. The first part is for the really lazy and the really impatient that just want to hear the most basic way of dealing with deadheading roses, and they don't want to listen to the rest of this video. So I'm going to do that first, and then I'm going to go into more detail for the people that really want to understand why they do things and not just 1, 2, 3, do it like this and be over with. Because the 1, 2, 3 way may be faster, but you won't really understand why you're doing things, so you won't really do them correctly, and you won't be able to really follow through on all the things you need to do to take care of your roses. The easy way is you see the rose, it's looking good, it's in great shape, whatever, you let it alone, and at some point it starts looking a little shitty. Let's find one that's looking a little shitty, and I'm gonna show you what it means to deadhead it. You can deadhead it with your hands alone, or you can use a scissor or a sécateur, whatever you want. So here's a rose that has had its day, okay? These are roses that have had their day. So if you don't want to listen to the rest of this video to learn what things really are about, and you just want to learn to deadhead, all you do is you take your scissors, you take this rose that is beginning to have its day, and you just cut it off. And it falls, and you're done. You have done the most basic kind of deadheading, and if you don't want to do anything else, and if you just do that, it's okay. Now, if you really want to have very nice roses, continue with me for the continuation of the video. Okay, so this is now for you that really want to have very nice roses like these ones, okay? So the first thing to do in order to understand how to deadhead them correctly is to try to identify what kind of rose you have, what kind of specific rose you have. And this is a huge can of worms because there's so many different kind of roses, but I'm going to simplify it for you into some very basic types that you'll be able to identify without dealing with a lot of terminology and blah 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 of the specialists and the garden specialists and all this that always intimidate us. So we're gonna discuss the different types of roses together right now. First of all, my favorite kind. My favorite kind is this kind of rose. This, we're gonna call it, we're not gonna use the formal terminology, we're gonna call it the longer stemmed rose, okay? Longer stemmed rose means that you have a rose here and there are some others, you see, there are some other buds right here, rose buds, but essentially the rose itself has a long stem, okay? Oh, it smells so good. So these are the longer stemmed roses, okay? And they're the ones you want to offer as a single rose. So when you go to offer to somebody a rose and you're holding a single rose, that's a longer stemmed rose, okay? It doesn't necessarily mean it has only one rose, but very often it will. And if you want and if it has other ones like this ones, you can cut the other ones off and you have a long stem like here, and there's a rose at the end. That's the classic kind of, I want to give you a single rose thing, okay? So that's the longer stem rose, and we're gonna get back to what you do when you want that. Okay, the next kind that we're going to talk about is roses that seem to be growing in a bouquet. Okay, so a bunch of roses that are coming out of a single place that are growing all together in a bouquet. Here is an example of that. Okay, you see here we have all kinds. They're in the same level. You see there, these are all rose buds, tiny little roses. There's one that's already open, and if you follow their stems, they all finish up to pretty much one specific point. So from this one specific point, you have all these roses coming up. So when they all bloom, basically by cutting the stem in one place right here, let's say, and offering it to somebody, you're offering them about 10 to 12 roses all together in a stem. Okay, so this we're gonna call ourselves bouquet roses. There are technical words about them like multiflora, grandiflora and all that, but I'm not gonna bug you with those at all, because why do we need to learn so many new words? Now we're gonna move down in the garden. This is the Alpine garden, as you can see, and there's still snow up somewhere there. I don't know if you can see it. It's a funky day today. So this is all my garden. This is the Alpine garden. And I have videos of all kinds of plants, describing all kinds of these plants, like this black plant here that's beautiful and everything else. And I have a little Japanese garden as well, right over here with Japanese maples. And there they are. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's go and talk roses right now. So I'm back, and I'm actually standing on a ladder, and I'm on top of the pergola. This is the house, and this is the second floor. And so I'm standing on the terrace, and this is pretty much all a rose. You see this is a white rose that's spent, and there are all kinds of roses behind me. You see all these whites, they're roses, and this is what is called a climbing rose. Okay, this is a climbing rose, which means it climbs all the way up from all the way down over there. It climbs all the way up, it comes up, and it gives me shade on the pergola, on the terrace where I'm standing. So here it is, and it makes roses. It's the end of the season for him. Normally you could see all of this was completely white with roses, really thousands of roses, and now it's the end, and they're all falling, and they're looking like this. Okay, or even more progressed degeneration, they're looking like this. Okay, so the way, again, you deadhead these is, of course, the simplest way that we're talking about it. We cut it like this, and then it's gone. Okay, but there's a difference with the climbing roses. The climbing roses have extremely long stems, okay? They have extremely long stems that are, for example, I will show you an extremely long stem here. Here's an extremely long stem of a climbing rose. You see how long it goes? It goes for feet and feet. It can be 10 feet, 12 feet, 20 feet. So this is a single stem, okay? And they're coming from over there, okay, and they extend all the way across the terrace to where the pergola ends. Okay, so when you cut this, when you deadhead this, there's something very important you must follow. You don't just cut the tip of the rose, as I told you. Okay, you have to cut also a little bit of the stem here, so that what you're left with is pretty much, as you can see, I've been left with, is what is called a fishbone pattern. What is a fishbone pattern? You know what a fishbone looks like. There's a straight line through the fish, and then there are bones coming out of the straight line of the fish like this. Okay, like my two fingers. Okay, or in this case like this. This is how you want to cut a climbing rose. You want to make you want to leave little small pieces like this all along the stem, one after the other, as I'm showing you right now. Okay, and you want to cut all the roses up and leave just a couple of leaves. These couple of leaves are really for giving energy to the remaining plant, but you don't want these parts of the fishbone to get very long, because they never get good and they never make so many roses. So what you want to do is you want the central stem to be super long, and you can train it to go wherever you want. In my case, to cover the terrace so that I have nice coverage. And you see, this is the new part, that's why it's sparse. But over here, you can see it's completely dense and gives me nice shade. So when you have, listen, when you have a climbing rose, you cut it like a fish bone. So you leave a long stem and you cut these things short. Okay, now we're gonna go and talk about another kind of climbing rose, and then we're gonna go back to the original roses that I discussed, the long stem rose and the bouquet roses, and how you deal with those. We're now at another rose bush. This is another climbing rose, as you can see, but this one is different because it makes miniature bouquet-like roses. They're really, really pretty, as you can see, and they come together in amazing bouquets all over the place. This goes on and on and on both sides of me, and it features on top of my head. It looks like this. It's all beautiful, these beautiful, beautiful, beautiful roses everywhere you see. So there are so many of these, and the whole thing is so dense. So I basically, if I was to sit down with this little scissor and deadhead each single one of them, I would spend my life doing this, and I don't want to do this. Okay, I have better things to do. So in this particular situation where you have so many little individual roses on a climbing rose, we're always on the climbing roses, what you want to do is effectively let them finish, let them fall off, and decongest this place, because really to get in there is very, very difficult. And then when they're done, you can take a large sécateur and try as best you can to maintain this fishbone pattern that I explained to you with the white roses earlier over here, okay? If you don't do it, the results will be messy. So if you're really lazy and you don't want to do it, the results will be messier. So it's better if you do it. But if you don't do it, it's not the end of the world, because these things are very, 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 very willing to provide you with tons of roses every year, and they're not that sensitive, they're kind of hardy. So if you're really lazy, you can just let them be. So if you have climbing miniature roses that look like this, basically it's the most forgiving kind. You can just let them go, it'll be messy, and about once a year you can attack the bush and kind of reduce the mess that you will see over in a fishbone pattern. Okay, that's what you do with climbing minuscule roses. Now we're back here with my beloved long-stemmed roses, my favorite ones and the most romantic ones. Okay, so these ones are tricky. If you want to deadhead them completely correctly, it's not enough just to cut the top of the rose once it's spent, like we did before, the lazy method. It's not enough to have the lazy method. You have to do something else a little more complicated, okay? And I'm gonna show it to you, and it's actually quite simple. You look at the rose, okay? You look at the rose, here it is. Number one, this rose is open now, and you have buds here, okay? The buds clearly will open and will become roses. Of course you want them to open and become roses, but by the time they open and become roses, this guy will probably not look very good. You have two choices. Lazy choice, you just let it be and you wait until these also flower and become and wilt. And then you deal with all of them at the same time. This is lazy method. Meticulous method is you cut them off, you deadhead them, as I showed you before in the basic way. You deadhead them at the base as they wilt. So when this one wilts, you cut it off, and then you let these things have their journey, and then you cut them off as they wilt one after the other. Okay, so this is how you deal with these long-stemmed roses. Now, when they're all done, when this particular bunch of roses is all done, what you do is you have to do what's called counting the leaves, okay? To know where you're gonna cut, where you're gonna deadhead properly. So if you look at the rose, you follow the rose, you arrive to the first set of leaves. Here's the first set of leaves, okay? Let me center it. There it is. You count the leaves here, this first set of leaves, and it's tricky to show it with one hand. Let me try hard. Yes, here it is. So you see that this has 3 leaves. Okay, there are just 3 leaves here. Okay, you keep on going down the same stem until you get to a point right here where you see, again, I have to mess up with the phone, and where you see there are suddenly 5 set of leaves. Okay, you see 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, where you want to cut is you want to cut at where the 5 leaf stems start. Okay, and I'm gonna make it very simple for you and repeat it in the simplest way. Oh, there's a helicopter. So you go down, you find the rose, you follow the stem, you skip all the part that has 3 leaves, you arrive to the first place where it has 5 leaves, which is here, and you cut here. Okay, you cut all the part that is the rose and all the part that is the 3 leaves. You find the base of the 5 leaves and you cut right here. Okay, and this way what you're left with is a stem with a 5-leaf branch, the first 5-leaf branch from the top going downwards. Okay, why this is important, don't worry about it, it's too technical. But what you want to do when you finish deadheading this kind of rose is you want to be left with stems with 5-leaf branches. If you do this correctly, then your rose bush will reward you like mine and will give you lots and lots of nice roses. Okay. If you're lazy and you don't want to deal with this, just cut it off like I showed you before. Just clip the top and it'll still work out, but it will not be as nice. Okay. Finally, the bouquet roses that I showed you before, it's pretty much the same thing. It just will look a little bit different. We're gonna go down. Here's the bouquet, okay? Here's the bouquet type of roses, which are the roses you probably have, because most people like these because they keep flowering all summer, okay? So again, once again, you look down and you see this, these are 3 leaves, okay? And then you go further down and then you find this part that is 5 leaves, okay? You see this part? Oops, here it is. You see this part? This is 5 leaves, okay? So you cut right at the base where the 5 leaves are, okay? So you will cut right here, okay? So you will leave the 5-leaf part out right here and you will cut this entire bouquet once it's all wilted. Okay, so you'll be left with a little stubby part with a 5-leaf branch on the top, and then this thing will reward you with another bouquet during the same growing season. So that is scratching the surface of the whole difficult business. It's not so difficult. The whole business of deadheading your roses, which is part of what keeps a rose bush healthy. There are other things to deal with when you're growing roses that I will discuss in another video, again in as simple of a manner as possible. I hope you enjoyed this video. I have lots of other ones showing you how to deadhead your lilies, your tulips, your daffodils and everything else. If you like my videos, please subscribe and hit like. Thank you so much. Noma Dimitri from the Alpine Garden.